Our travels have brought us over to the City of Rochester, New York, and we are now at the St. Anne's Nursing Home on Portland Avenue in the City of Rochester. We're going to go visit a long-forgotten, long-lost cemetery. It is the Hooker Pioneer Cemetery, located on the north side of St. Anne's Nursing Home, very close to the Keeler Street Expressway, which unfortunately provides a never-ending din of traffic noise on this historic spot. The sign reads, "Given to Irondequoit by Alexander Hooker in 1840. Several hundred early settlers are buried here." This cemetery is a significant piece of Irondequoit history. The land surrounding the area was once part of the Hooker farmstead, which was bordered by present-day Norton Street on the south, Goodman Street on the east, Portland Avenue on the west, and north to Beyond Ridge Road. Alexander Hooker and his wife Lucy purchased the land in 1828, when the area looked much different than it does today. Thickly covered by timber, there were few roads, few people, and wild animals such as bears and wolves commonly roamed the forest. The cemetery is thought to have started when the Hookers began to bury members of their family here. The site eventually became Irondequoit's first public cemetery when Alex Hooker gifted it to the town of Irondequoit in 1840. It has been estimated that as many as 1,000 people may lie buried here, including Seneca Indians, early settlers, and many other people who lived nearby through the late 1800s. Only about 1/3 ever received a grave marker. The first Hooker home was a log cabin that was left by the previous owner. 5 years after acquiring the land, Alex and Lucy finished and moved into a new home they built in 1833. Hooker House is long gone. Behind me is the Keeler Street Expressway. Back in the 1960s, I think it was, is when the house was demolished and the Keeler Street Expressway went in its place. Any traces of that house are now long buried underneath the expressway behind me. In the distance there is the Hooker family burial plot. Here is the grave of Lucy Hooker, died 26 July 1885, age 85, and Alex, her husband, who died at age 59 on the 2nd of January 1849. And next to their parents are daughters, Lucy Hooker Morris. She died on 13 October 1856 at the age of 35, and Harriet, who died 24 January 1860 at the young age of 24. The Hooker Cemetery remained the town's only public cemetery for 55 years until Irondequoit purchased land at Culver Road and Hoffman Road for another cemetery in 1895. It seems that, over time, Irondequoit's leaders grew weary of maintaining both cemeteries, because in 1932 they simply stopped providing funds to maintain the older Hooker site. The grounds quickly became overgrown and faded from the public eye, which was a shame really, because the Hooker Cemetery is where Irondequoit's earliest pioneers and settlers are buried. These were the people that cleared the forests, settled the land. Some even served as town supervisors, clerks, and justices. It seems the town simply turned their backs and forgot about them. To add insult to injury, in the 1950s, a portion of this historic cemetery was lost when it was unceremoniously bulldozed during an expansion of St. Anne's Nursing Home. Graves and gravestones alike were destroyed and pushed into the adjoining creek. There have been some attempts over the years to piece this forgotten cemetery back together. In 1954, a VFW post cleared away underbrush. They discovered that soldiers from the Revolutionary War, the Black Hawk War, the War of 1812, and the American Civil War were buried here. In all, 15 veteran graves are known to exist in the cemetery, and this marker was erected in their honor. Here lies a veteran from the War of 1812, Mr. Joseph Leggett, born 1778, died 1865. Leggett was a farmer who came to Irondequoit from Saratoga County, New York in 1815. His headstone looks to have been one that was bulldozed, broken, and pieced back together. Flag behind me denotes the grave of Archibald Carter, who fought in the Black Hawk Wars. Died in 1877. Buried here with no marker other than that small little square. This is the grave of Crawford White, a sergeant in the Union Army's Company F, 108th New York Infantry during the American Civil War. His service record shows he was discharged on 6 April 1863. He died 7 months later on 14 November 1863 at just 20 years old. From a wound or disease, I don't know. Here's another Civil War soldier, Lafayette Coon, born 1834 in Steuben County, New York, served in Company H, 88th Ohio Infantry. Died here in New York in 1889 at age 55. The sign behind me says Merchants Road, their first road, which ran from Canandaigua to the mouth of the Genesee River, built in 1804. And the only part of that road that exists today is that path behind me, right along the side of St. Anne's Nursing Home on Portland Avenue in Rochester. In fact, the Merchants Road was actually built atop an old Indian trail that once went from a landing at the mouth of the Genesee River, just past the rear of this cemetery, worked its way out to a Seneca Indian village on Broughton Hill near the town of Victor, and ended at Canandaigua. Because of this ancient trail's proximity to the Hooker Cemetery, it is believed the Seneca Indians may have buried their dead on this sandy knoll for perhaps centuries before the Hookers. Where possible, burial sites have been located and marked. In the 1980s, efforts were made to collect the remains of the headstones and piece them back together. While some were saved, many were broken beyond repair and identification. A few markers were returned to their proper grave sites. Far more were simply lost. All the white stones in the ground behind me are broken gravestones. Those buried there have been lost to time. A handful of significant stone fragments were placed in the ground in the southeast corner of the site, which forms a sort of gravestone mosaic. The Hooker Cemetery is a great find here in the little town of Irondequoit, New York, outside of Rochester. Remember, life is a journey. Enjoy the ride. And as always, thank you for watching. The sign behind me says that this is Merchants Road, which ran from Canandaigua to the mouth of the Mississippi. Mississippi?